Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, debt slicers, peasants, faceless, minions, meat sacks, robots. I'm a useful idiot. Welcome. And I want to talk about robots again. I did some videos recently about robotics, and I've done quite a few videos about robotics over the years. It's definitely a trend that it's going to be more important as the future unfolds. But recently it's been really fascinating because Financial Times, which of course is a bullhorn for the status quo, the elites, the banking industry, corporate culture, is just recently done a series on robotics. And the fact that they've done about 5 or 6 different headline stories and about 3 or 4 or 5 different videos all at the same time about robotics tells me that they're putting it, it's a billboard for the big players out there to get on board now. Robotics is where you want to put some money, and it certainly is this view is certainly confirmed by going through the material. First of all, we have right off the bat one article called "Why Robots Are Coming for U.S. Service Jobs," and it highlights Andy Puzder, the CEO of Hardee's, who said that the rising employment costs could drive the spread of automation in the fast food sector. It said the combination of minimum wage rises and health costs would make it more and more cost effective to move to automation. And that's certainly a viewpoint that I've held, unfortunate as it is. 2/5 of U.S. employees in jobs that can be replaced by automation with the technology is already available to replace 2/5 of U.S. employees. And that includes everything from touch screens to burger flipping robots. And the 3 biggest occupations in the United States are the biggest targets for future automation: retail salespeople, store cashiers, and food workers. And that involves well over 10 million people. And of course, the attached and tangent industries would also be affected by that. So that figure represents a small portion of jobs that would be affected by this. The one problem with this article, of course, it does go into the fake hiring recovery and says that, well, robotics aren't going to be that much of a problem right now, and especially with minimum wage and health costs, because there's this hiring frenzy going on right now. But of course, behind those figures is the fact that most of the hiring is temporary and part-time workers, and so actually only confirms the fact that more and more automation will be replacing a lot of jobs. Citigroup suggests that nearly 2 million jobs will be lost at U.S. and European banks in the next 10 years, because they're also talking about how these effects of robotics are going to affect the financial industry. And that's been something we've seen already. Tens of thousands of bankers have been fired the last several years, and that trend will continue with 2 million jobs being lost in Europe and U.S. in the next 10 years through automation. And a lot of that has to do with mortgage processing. As one of the articles points out, a lot of mortgage processing will be done by new companies like Roostify, and there's a company called Avant that does online lending, and then the one most people are familiar with, Quicken Loans. They have a new service that's even faster than before as far as getting mortgage paperwork done and mortgages processed, called Rocket Mortgage Program. And then we go into another article the Financial Times did called 7 Robots You Need to Know, and it talks about the 7 major designs that are in development right now. They're going to have a huge impact. One is the Atlas robot, which is an all-purpose robot with artificial intelligence. The Superflex suit, which will integrate with the human body to make the human body through robotics capable of all sorts of stunning feats. The Amazon Echo, which will be voice interactive with all the machinery you have, including all the appliances in your house, will soon become voice interactive with the Amazon Echo. And then lifelike humanoids, like the ones we've seen being developed in Japan, where they'll be used for all sorts of different positions, but they will be very human-like in their appearance and manner. Then there's the Pepper customer assistant robot, and in fact, Financial Times did a whole separate video about Pepper visiting, and so I'll attach that below. And that would be like an all-purpose companion customer service mini robot And there's the robo brain that they're working on, which will essentially be what will end up powering most of the actual robots, a consummate robot brain. And then lastly, of course, the driverless car, which was being called the Google car now, because they're the ones who are in the steps to develop this technology along with some other companies. And then there's, of course, the much needed advice from Financial Times about investment surge gives the U.S. the robot lead. So they're talking about, of course, most of the money going to robotics right now is happening in the United States. And Japanese tech, U.S. technology being the lead in a lot of developments that are coming out of Silicon Valley involving robotics. I guess a lot of the robotic components have come down in price, and that's another reason that it's made more effective to develop these robotics and these robotic startups. But the article goes into that U.S. is set to become strategically placed to be the most important investment center for robotics. And a lot of that has to do with the advance of artificial intelligence and deep learning, which I brought up in other videos. That's one of the missing components. You take robotics and then the progress that's been made in developing artificial intelligence, and you combine them together, and the possibilities of what robotics can accomplish and what kind of jobs it can replace, of course, grow. And Japan and Germany dominated industrial robotics and have, but apparently right now the U.S. and China are dominating the new robotics. And Japan still, of course, remains a powerhouse and will, but I found that an interesting footnote, particularly considering I feel like the U.S. and China will eventually be partners, and actually behind the scenes are partners now, and we find the U.S. and China again joined in this development of robotics. The U.S. investment in robotics doubled this last year to $587 million, global growth 17% a year, so it is definitely a performing sector. The robot market total is $71 billion worldwide, and they think that it will be $135 billion or double by 2019, and I see no reason why that wouldn't happen. This march of robotics is now something definitely way on the radar, and I'm sure those numbers are low because it's going to have to be an amazingly attractive sector for investment in the future, particularly when you put robotics and artificial intelligence as well as 3D printing together. There's going to be some interesting developments. As Posner said, the CEO of Hardee's, quote, "The fact of the matter is that automation is coming. The only question is how fast it is coming," unquote. And I have to agree with that 100%. And we've seen this kind of displacement before, of course, with the agriculture, with 60% of U.S. labor force in the mid-19th century, only 2% today, but of course the agricultural workers moved to the manufacturing sector, and right now it doesn't necessarily look like there's a huge replacement sector for a lot of jobs that can be replaced with automation, sad to say. But there's another article by Financial Times that talks about the first robotic surgeon. So now we have the first robot surgeon who apparently has outperformed a human surgeon as far as doing soft tissue work. Once again, if we can get robot surgeons in the future, why would anybody spend all those years and all that money in medical school when hospitals can just buy a robotic surgeon who, of course, can do surgery 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as well. And then another article in Financial Times is what is a manager's role in a robot world, of course, talking about who is going to be the shepherd or herd master for these robot drones that are going to be working. So there will be that sector will develop as that people who work well with robots. It used to be who works well with people, but now you'll rise up in the ranks because of how well you work with robots. And I joke, but a lot of what the article alludes to seems to point that direction. Somebody who has certain technical skills and then and can run an entire restaurant full of robots. And then I'll attach also videos below that Financial Times put out also about the long road to the driverless future, talking about driverless cars. And there's quite a few companies out there working on the technology right now. There's a lot of prototypes that are out in the field, and I think we even have Japan talking about having driverless cars by the time the Tokyo Games are there, Olympic Games. And but this look at driverless cars in this video, pretty interesting. So attached below. And then Man or Machine, another video that Financial Times put out about building robots that are more like us, and talking about the more humanistic ones that are being developed in Japan. And all the more interesting because they're not necessarily making robots that are generic. A lot of the robots that they are designed to be specific people or have a certain amount of personality are really something to see. And so there you have it. I just wanted to bring this up because I watch Financial Times and have for many years, and rely on them to get the economic views of the elites. So when they do an entire series on robotics and all the different angles of robotics, not only is it fascinating, but it shows they're well aware of those trends that are going on, and it will converge with a lot of other interesting geopolitical things that are going on in the world right now, and could be hard to employ a lot of people, replaced by automation in the future, both here and in China and elsewhere in the world. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.